Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the one of the important example called the some of the method which are available from the inside this particular array list here. Okay, so we'll try to continue the remaining method how we can use this particular the array list classes here. So if we observe carefully what we are doing here now you can see here we are trying to come up with a retain all add method, something like add all. Okay, and we discuss about the remove method. And now you can see contains all method, contains method we discuss it. So we'll identify what are all the other method we are having here. Now let me go to the file what we implemented earlier. Okay, so now you can see clear method. So before discussing the clear method, any other method is pending inside this particular collection interface, like removal. Removal basically, if you specify this particular collection, it will match and it will remove all the objects here. Okay, later we can call this particular clear method here. Now observe carefully. I am going to call the particular remove all method. How this particular remove all is going to work. So I want to comment out this particular retains all. So retains all basically. Yes, tell me.
Can you please explain the return all method again?
So it's a simple. Basically, if we observe here, I'm trying to pass this particular AL2. So AL2 right now we are having three objects here. So this particular three objects are going to identify in this particular AL. If these objects are available, it will keep. So remaining objects are going to remove here. So this is the only the information we need to understand. If these three objects are also not available in this particular AL, and all the objects are going to remove from this particular AL array list object. Okay, basically it will compare the object. So now we have this is the AL object, and here we are trying to find out the AL2. Now you can see inside AL2 we are having three objects like a spring and a collection and a framework. Okay, these three objects if available inside this particular AL, because we are having lot of objects in the AL, it will check here. If these three objects are available here, it will keep those three objects here, and the remaining object will not available. So now if you see this left and right objects are going to remove, only these three objects will available. Even though if these three objects are also not available here, these three objects are with different object if we found, now these three also will remove here. Okay, basically whatever we are going to pass this the AL2 as a parameter, it will try to find out these objects, and if it is available, it will keep. Otherwise, along with the other object, these objects also will remove. For example, here instead of this particular AL2, I will pass AL3. Here I'm passing AL3. Now you can see if I'm trying to print this particular last statement, empty we are getting. Okay, empty we are getting. So here we are getting empty. Now if you observe carefully one more time, and I'm trying to add AL2. Whenever I'm trying to add this particular AL2, now we are having three objects. So why we are getting three objects? Because here we are doing what we are doing here. We are calling the add all method and bypassing this particular AL2. Now what happening internally? So here along with this particular ABCDEF, we are having Spring collection framework. Okay. So this particular objects are now it is inserted into this particular AB. Because of this particular line, these objects are available and remaining. Now if you see these three objects are removed and these two objects are also removed here, because so it is not matched with this particular AL2. Only these three records are matched here. So because of these three records are available and the remaining objects are now not available. So all the objects are removed from this particular AL. Now you can see here I'm printing the AL, and here also I'm trying to print the same AL. Okay, after AL I'm trying to print the size. Now you can see size is 8, and after that whenever I'm calling the retain all method, only the matched records are keeping and the remaining unmatched records are removed from this particular collection. So which collection it is going to remove? From this particular AL.
So, sir, like I'm telling you what my understanding. So, if we write AL2 dot retain all, and in bracket we will pass AL3.
Hmm.
So, whatever AL2 has, if it has anything data of the AL3, it will remove that one. Am I right?
Okay. See. So AL2 dot, if you call the same retain, and if you pass here AL object. Now what
Mm-hmm.
happens internally? So inside this particular AL, whatever the object we are having, it should match with this particular AL2. Okay. So like whatever the records are going to match here, so those records are will keep inside this particular AL2, and remaining records are removed from this particular AL2. So which is the reference we are calling the method? So that is the objects are going to remove here if unmatched records if we found. So if we observe, if I'm going to print here AL2, now only the three records only printing, because here now you can see AL2 I'm printing. So in the AL2 we have only three records, but if I'm trying to print AL, we are having these many records. So these records is not, it's trying to check here, but we did not find here, and only we found this particular three records. So because of these three records, still it is available in the AL2. It is not removed from this particular AL2, because from the AL and AL2 we identified. For example, if I'm going to, not here, if I'm going to match with this particular AL3, now you can see AL2, now it is empty. It is empty. So why it is empty? Because AL3, so AL3 basically 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 we are having. Now these two records are not matched with this particular, these three records. Okay, whenever the records are not matched here, it will try to remove all the objects from the particular AL2. So this is happening correctly. So simply we can check this. And here I'm having spring, and here I'm having something like a collection, and here I'm having framework. Okay, and another object we are having something like 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. Now if you see, these two objects are not matched with this particular these three objects. Whenever any record is not matched here, all the records are going to deleted. All the records are going to deleted from AL2. So this is, we'll call it as AL2, and this is we are calling as a AL3. Okay, array list 3, array list 2. So in the array list 2, we provided string related, and array list 3, we provided integer related values. So because of this not matching any record, these records are not matched. Because of this, now we are getting empty, because these three objects are removed from the particular AL2. Okay, so is it clear? Any questions?
Yes, sir, got it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Now, so we'll move on to the another important section here, something like remove all. How this particular remove all method is going to work, and here it is expecting collection here. Here it is expecting collection as a parameter. So we'll try to find out the how this particular collection as a parameter is going to work internally. Now we'll go back to the same array list here, and here I'm going to provide AL2. Okay, so first we'll try with AL2. Later will identify with the AL3 how it is going to work. Now what we need to understand basically here, if I'm going to run after this particular AL dot remove all, I want to print AL2, and here I will start printing this, and here also I'm going to start. Now you can see we are trying to print A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I, J we are printing. So why the remaining method? Because I'm passing here AL2. Whenever I'm trying to pass this particular AL2, what happens internally? Only the condition, like whatever the records are matched here, those match records are removed here. Can you independent? This is important here. So before going to call this particular remove all, if I'm going to print this, if I'm going to print this particular AL, now we'll understand here. This is basically the original object before calling this particular removal method. Now what happens internally? We have a string collection and framework records also. But what happens internally? So whenever I'm calling this particular remove all, the match records getting the point, because these objects are also available inside this particular AL2 array list 2. Okay, so whatever the match records we have, the match records are removed, and unmatched records as it is, it's keeping inside this particular the array list object here. Okay, so this is we need to understand very carefully. Now we'll identify how this particular code is implemented internally. This is very important. We need to understand the section of identifying the code, the remove all method. Now if I'm going to open this particular remove all, now you can see, so batch remove we are calling, getting the pen. So batch remove we are calling here, and now you can see here we are passing collection. So earlier if you see this batch, the batch remove method is called, and here we pass as a true. Here we pass as a true, and it start with a 0, and this is the how many elements we are having inside this particular array list. So the size it is removing here, like it is size returning here. Now whenever I'm calling this particular batch remove, what you need to understand, okay, now you can see collection and a boolean parameter, so from which index onwards we are trying to start, and end index here. So end is nothing but it's a size here. Now here we need to identify, here we are having elementary data, and we are checking here. Here we are trying to check this particular from loop, the particular for loop internally. What we are doing is we are trying to, whatever the from variable we are having, we are trying to store into this particular R, and there is no condition, only initialization as well as iteration, and we are checking R equals to end, R equals to n. Now what you need to understand here, the R equals to end here. Basically, here I am defining the R, and this particular R, now it is trying to initialize from this particular from variable. So both the values are 0. So this is the condition is not satisfying here. Now we need to understand this particular condition. If anything not contained, because first value, what is the first value we are going to get? AB, getting the pen. From this particular collection, we are calling, and here this collection is having spring, the first variable, and yes, it is contained the AB. So it is not going to match here. So whenever it is not matched here, we are trying to break this. Once we break, we're moving on to this section here. We are moving on to this section. Now if you observe carefully, what happening internally, it's trying to replace with this particular E. Okay, so we'll identify this example how it is working internally, so that we'll get to know regarding this particular remove all method. Okay, here I'm trying to put a breakpoint. So now you can see the breakpoint is stopped at line number 20 and to 24. Now we are at 35 line number. Okay, now I'm trying to call this particular remove all method. Now internally we are calling batch remove, and I am trying to move on to the one by one element data R. So what is the R value right now? The R value basically 0. Getting the point. This particular R value basically 0, and there is no condition we identified. So this particular condition is not going to satisfy. Now you can see it is not satisfied. And here we need to understand what happening internally. What is the value we are going to get here? Basically false we are getting. And so false, basically this is also false here. This is also false. And if I'm going to make this particular not condition, so both are not satisfied here. Both are not satisfied. Even if you make this particular not condition, what happening internally? Whenever I'm trying to make not condition, this value will become, so as it is available, whatever the value we are having false, and this particular value will become true. So now you can see it is going to work on this particular opposite manner that we already identified. Whenever we are making the false, it will be written. So true not equals to this particular false. So because of this, this condition is not satisfying here. Now one more loop, one more time it is repeating here. So second time, what happening? Again, the condition is not satisfying. Now, now also this particular condition will not satisfy. So now I hope the condition will satisfy. Now you can see condition is satisfied. So why the condition will satisfy? Now if you see this, it will return true. It is returning true. And here, this particular value false here. Getting the point? So whenever not condition we are making it, what happens internally? This will also be false here. So in that case, the condition is satisfying here. Now we are trying to break the loop. Once we break this particular loop, we'll move on to the below line. Okay, what is the R value right now? R value 4, W value 3. R value 4 and W value 3. So why we are getting this particular W value 3? Because here, if we go to this particular ES, so 3 we are having Spring, okay, collection framework. Okay, 3 we are having Spring. Because of this, now what happens internally? It matched with this particular C. It's matched with this particular string here. Whatever the string we are providing, both records are matched here. Because of this only, now we are trying to break this particular loop. Breaking something like we are trying to stop this particular loop here. Okay. After stopping this, now what we are doing is we are coming back to the one more loop, so which is inserted at line number 860. What we need to understand here, basically here again we are trying to repeat the loop by specifying this particular object. And what is the condition we are making? So R value, if it is less than to this particular end, R value, if it is less than to this particular end, the condition will stop here. Okay, we'll try to repeat this particular loop also here. Now you can see, so condition is satisfied because the R value we are having right now 4. So R and what is the end value we are having? 8. So we can insert few more values. Getting the point? Few more times this particular loop it is going to repeated here. Now again we are checking the condition. And here what is the value we are having? R value we are having 4. And if I'm going to provide this particular value as an inspect here, now what is the value I'm getting? Collection. Okay. So now you can see collection I'm trying to store into this particular E, and here also I'm trying to check. The collection is also available. This particular condition will satisfy. Whenever it is satisfied, now what I'm doing it, whatever the value I'm having, I'm trying to initializing it. Now carefully observe. So in the ES, what is the W value? 3. In the third index location, what is the value it is going to store? Now if you can see, what happened? This is returning false earlier. Maybe. Okay, got it. So this complement we are having false. Because of this, it is not satisfied here. So this value, if you see, this is returning as a true. Now you can see if I'm going to open inspect here, it is returning true. And because of this particular false, it is not matched here. Getting the point. But here we match the condition. This section is returning true and we made as a false not equal condition we are using here. So it is matched here. Getting the point. True and it is not equal to this particular false. So opposite right, it is going to match here. But here we made as a equal here because of this particular false, it is not matched here. Now we are trying to repeat one more condition. So this will also not match here. But now you can see this section will match here. Okay, this section will match. Now if you see here, we are going to get as a false here. This entire section will get as a false. What happens? It should be inspect something. Okay, he cannot find the variable. Okay, anyway, now what we can do, this particular condition will satisfy. Now we are coming back to the line number 862. So why we are coming back to this? Because this section will return this section will return basically false here. Now if I'm going to try, now it is returning false. Getting the point? Why it is returning false here? So here, whatever we are having, yes or R, what we are going to identify, most probably GH I'm thinking. Yes, GH value. Okay, so this particular GH value, it is not available inside this particular C. Getting the point? Inside this particular C, we don't have the particular GH value. Now you can see we are having only these three values. So because of this, what happens internally? It is satisfied the condition. Okay, it is satisfied the condition, and we are trying to come back to this. What is the W value right now? The W value you can see 3 only. Okay, still the value is not yet modified here. The value still it is a 3. And what is the E value right now? What is the E value right now? Here you can see GH. The right side variable section we can identify it is a GH value. Okay, this is important, we need to understand here. Now what I am doing here, in the third index location, I am trying to replace with this particular GH. Okay, so whenever I am trying to come back to here, now you can see, so in the third index location, the value is now replaced with this particular GH here. Okay, getting the point? Because what happens internally, whatever the removal we are calling, those records are not matched here. Getting the point? Whatever those records are not matched here, so those records are going to remove here. Getting the point? Those records are going to remove here. Now one more record here. Getting the point? So what is the R value? 7 we are getting here, and this is the last iteration. And finally, this condition is also satisfied. And in the fourth index location, getting the point? In the fourth index location, what happening internally? Whatever the ij value we are getting here, this particular ij, it is trying to store in the fourth index location. Now, right now, what is the value we are having in the fourth? Now you can see collection. Collection we are having. Okay, the collection is going to replace it with I and j. Now you can see. Now if you observe carefully, the collection now it is replaced with this particular I and j. And we have a 5, 6, 7 also. We have 5, 6, 7 also. But how it is going to identify this 5, 6, 7? Now if I'm trying to come back to here, finally block we are executing here. Okay, we are executing this particular finally block. Now identify what is the end right now we are having 8, and what is the W we are having? W we are having 5. So finally, what is the mod count right now? 6. So totally the mod count will become 9. 9 here. Now you can see. So it is 9. It is returning the mod count here, and we are trying to work on the shift operations. Shift operations. What happens internally? Based on this particular fifth, the right now W value we are having 5th here, only the 5th values will available, remaining are not available here. So once I come out of this particular shift operations here, now I am going to explain this particular ES here. Now I am going to explain this particular ES. They are making as a null values. From the 6, they made as a null values here. Getting the point? So what you understand here? Whatever the matched records we are having, so those matched records are removed, and unmatched records we are keeping as it is. But where we are checking the matched records condition? This. Okay, this is important, we need to understand here. This section will identify the matched records here. Okay, this particular condition is going to identify the matched records here, and here if any records are going to match here, it will not going to insert the value, and unmatched records only, getting the pen, unmatched records only it will insert the value. Okay, so this is very important information we need to understand here. This is very important information we need to understand how exactly it will try to work on this particular internally. This is all about the removal method we identified here. So any questions, anyone having any questions regarding this particular remove all? So finally, These are all the values of printing. Okay, so this is basically one of the important example. Remove method is different, remove all method is different, because remove method we have a overloaded method. For example, we have a remove all also, I hope. Okay, remove if method we have. So this is basically predicate method. But now you can see remove method first is expecting index here. Based on the index, the particular object is going to remove, and remove we are trying to pass object as a parameter. The second one, the particular object is going to remove here, and the third one, now what we understand here, whatever the collection we are going to specify, and if the collection is not matched here, the unmatched records are going to remove, and matched records are going to keep as it is inside this particular remove all, and identify remove if here. Okay, remove if, and it is expecting predicate. Predicate basically it is a one of the functional interface. Getting the point? One of the functional interface. Okay, this is very important. Now inside this particular remove if, you can write the filter logic. You can write the filter logic. So what is the filter logic you can write? Getting the point? This is important here. This is important. We need to understand here. And what is the condition we can write? Again here I can write the here I can write something like array list I'm trying to write here. And what we can do, this particular filter, we need to identify filter dot okay is expecting string. Why it is expecting string? Okay, now understand here, because we passed as a string object here. Because of this, it is trying to find out the string related section. But now if I'm going to check what is the method we can write, what is the condition, concat index of method, replace which method is trying to return the boolean. So we can contain the something like here, the particular string section here. Now I'm going to write AB. Now if you see what happens internally, and I will comment out this. This remove all method I'm trying to comment out. Now we are trying to call the remove f. But what we need to understand here, I'm trying to add one of the lambda section here. Okay, now you can see what happening internally. Only this AB is removed. This AB removed. Now you can see here the match records. You can easily understand here. What is we are missing here? Only AB we are missing, and the remaining objects are available here. Getting the point? So this is basically when it is introduced this particular remove f, something like I think here it is not showing the information, but we need to move inside this particular array list class. We can identify when it is added, and what we need to understand basically here, it is expecting something like lambda. Okay, but the remaining method, whatever we discuss here, those methods will not expect as a lambda. So they are expecting as a string parameter or collection parameters or some int parameter, right? But this parameter, like this particular method, is expecting lambda. But how it is expecting it? If I'm going to open this, it is expecting predicate. So we discuss here predicate. Basically, it is a one of the functional interface. Okay, one of the functional interface. Now you can see this is the functional interface abstract method we are having, test method, and it is trying to return the boolean value. Okay, it is trying to return the Boolean value. This is important here. Getting the point? If this particular section is returns true, then only what happens internally, it will try to remove the object. And another section, if I'm going to write. Okay, now observe carefully. Here, instead of this particular contains, if I'm going to write a caret method, I will give as a something like 0. Now you can see what happens here. It is throwing some error here. Why it is throwing some error? Because caret is not returning. Caret method, it is not returning the particular boolean related. So it is trying to return the uh, char basically. Now you can see cannot convert from char to boolean. Cannot convert char to boolean. Whatever the expression we are going to write, the expression should return boolean here. Why it should return boolean? Because internally, what is the method we are calling? The predicate method and predicate interface. Inside the predicate interface, we have a test method. The test method is trying to return the boolean value. So we discussed about the lambda section earlier. Getting the point? The lambda section we discussed earlier, how it is working internally. Okay, so same thing here I'm trying to applicable here. Now I cannot use this particular caret here. Caret will not work. And any other method? Any other method we can use? So now you can see uh, these are the string related section. Only contains we can use, and content equal we can use, and something like content equals we can pass a buffers and start with and end with. So for example, if I'm going to use end with here, what is the value we can specify? Something like work here. Okay, I'm trying to end with this particular work. Now observe carefully, whenever I'm trying to write this particular lambda, now internally, now you can see, now observe carefully, A, B, C, D, E, F string collection is available. What we are missing? Framework. Okay, the framework is missed here. Why it is missed? Because it is satisfied the condition. Getting the point? It is satisfied the condition, it is removed here. Now, getting the point. So this is the remove method is introduced in the 1.8 onwards. Here we can pass the lambda. Okay, here we can pass the lambda. This is one of the important example. The remove if method, it is working internally. So basically this is we can use inside the same related examples as well. Okay, any questions or regarding this particular remove if method? Okay, if you don't have anything, now what we need to understand here, the collection related one only, the one pending method, it is something like a clear method. Whenever we are calling this particular clear, what it will do internally, it will try to remove the all the object. It will try to remove the all the object. So something like it is going to make null values. Will identify. Okay, al dot clear method I'm calling, and we'll identify how this particular clear method is doing. So simply you can see we are calling this particular for loop, and we are trying to make null values. We are trying to make this particular null values. So what is the size here? Now you can see. So first here we are initializing this, and here also we are initializing this. Okay, two size basically the two, whatever the two we are having here, this is basically the condition. Now you can see I less than 2, 2. So instead of writing this particular size, they are trying to initializing into this particular 2 variable. They are trying to make the condition. And I, what is I value? 0. Okay, 0 to size. So around we are having 8 or 7 values we are having. So this particular loop will repeat 7 or 8 times here. And each and every time we are trying to initializing as a null values. Okay, so we'll identify this, how this particular a clear method is going to work internally. I'm going to run this example as a debug mode. So we are at clear method. So before calling the clear method, these are all the values we are having. Okay. Now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to move inside this particular clear method. So what is the right mod count here? Basically, the mod count, how many times array list related methods we call, this count will give you the information here. Okay. So this particular mod count is implemented each and every method. Each and every method, it is implemented internally. Now finally, I'm trying to load the element object. Now what are all the element object we are having? So AB, CD, EF, and string collection framework, GH and IJ. So around 7. 7 is nothing but 8. Okay, the size we are having 8 here. Okay, size we are having 8 and I value 0. How many times this particular loop it is going to repeat? So 0 to 7, around 8 times it's going to repeat. For each iteration, what we are doing? We are making null. So now observe the AB, now it is replaced with.
So we can't hear you.
Okay, so observe carefully all the objects. Here, if you can identify all the objects are replaced with a null here. Getting the point. Now, what we need to understand here? What we need to understand basically, whenever we are calling this particular clear method, without checking the condition, each and every value they are making as a null. And here, what we need to understand, another important here, we are not using this particular braces here. We are not using any braces because only for loop is expecting single line here. Single line. Now you can see this is also important here. In the which scenario we can go for this particular brackets like a block of code, and which scenario we can go for the single values. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. Getting the point. This is all about the clear method, how it is working internally. Now once I come out of this particular clear method, what is the value it is going to print? Empty. It is printing empty. Okay, and finally, if I'm trying to print this particular size here, so finally, if I'm trying to print this particular size, what is the value we are going to get here? The size, after calling this particular clear method, the size will become 0. Getting the point. Now you can see we are trying to call this particular size as a 0. This is one of the important example, clear method. So rarely we are going to call this particular clear method because most of the cases we are not going to remove the object from this particular array list here. And we covered all the methods which are available inside this particular collection framework. Now we'll identify any methods are pending inside this particular list interface. Now you can see remove method we already discussed here. Index of and last index of also we identified here. So far we discussed about these are all the methods inside this particular list interface. Now what are the methods we are having? Okay, what are all the methods we are having here?
Sir, if you use clear method, it clears all AL and AL2 elements also.
Sorry. Can you repeat again?
If we use clear method, it clears all AL element and also AL2 both.
Yes, good question. What is the reference I'm passing you?
AL.
So only the AL objects only it will replace with null, not the AL2, because there is no relation here. How the compiler can understand the AL2? So only AL we can identify here, because with the help of the current object AL only, we are calling this particular clear method.
Then it act as a remove all method.
Yes. So clear is nothing but it's trying to make all the array list object as empty, and with after removing this particular values from the object array.
Okay.
Okay, so now we'll identify another important method. What we are having is something like list iterator, and list iterator it is internally is expecting one parameter and sub list. So first we'll discuss about the list iterator. So how this particular list iterator is going to work internally, we need to understand here. Now what I will do, I'm going to call this particular list iterator. Here, before calling this particular clear method, now I will call al dot list iterator. I'm calling here. Now what is the return type of this particular list iterator here? Now you can see list iterator internally it is trying to provide the string information. Okay, so this is the return type of this particular list iterator here. Now what we identified, it is trying to return the list iterator comma string here. Okay, now what we can understand here, because we identify the some of the method which are available inside this particular list iterator interface here. What are the method we are having? Basically, we can forward the values, so like it's like a forward direction and backward direction. It is going to applicable inside this particular list iterator here, because we have has next and has previous also. Okay, has next and has previous. So we can go for the next value or we can go for the previous value. So using this particular two method, we can come up with bidirections operations. We can move on to the next value and we can go for the like previous value. This is important section we are going to identify from this particular what we can call it as a list iterator here. Okay, this is one of the important concepts we are going to write here. Now I will write the values, and here this I do need list iterator. So if I'm going to print has previous, okay, this value I'm going to print with sys out here. Okay, so just will identify how the previous value will print, and the same way I'm going to print so another value list iterator dot has next. So two values I'm trying to print. Okay, I'm trying to print this particular two values. Now you can see what happens internally. First one it is printing false. Okay, first one it is printing false. Second one it is printing true. So why the first one it is printing false? Getting the point? Because this is the starting element. Whenever we are trying to call the starting elements, how we can identify the previous value. So if you see, this is the array list we are having something A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and some value we are having. Okay, it is started with a 0. Whenever I'm trying to start with this 0, we can call the next values. These are all the next values. But right now we don't have any previous value because of this particular starting point here. Now what we can do after moving into the index number 3, we can call the previous value and we can call the next value. And whenever we reach to this particular index number 8 here, there is no next value. Only we can identify the previous values here. Only we can identify the previous value. So based on the cursor, based on the current cursor where exactly it is, based on that we can check the previous value as well as next value. Getting the point? This is one of the important we need to understand here. Okay, now we'll try to write this example in the loop here. We'll try to write this example in the loop here. Now what I will do, I'm not going to print this particular loop here. We'll go for the while loop here. We'll go for the while loop, because while loop internally is expecting the parameter something like a boolean parameter. So if this particular boolean condition will satisfy, now what I will do, I'm going to call the list iterator dot next here, because has next we are calling. If we are having any next element, the has next will return true, and once it is returned true, we can load the value by calling the method called next.
So we can't hear you.
Okay, so I'm having some internet issues. So because of that, it is disconnected multiple times. Okay, anyway, now we come back to here. What we need to understand here, what we are doing is we are trying to creating the one while loop here, and each and every time this particular while loop, it is trying to return true. Then only we'll enter into this particular line number 42. Otherwise, we'll come out of the line number 44 here. Okay, so what we are understanding here, basically, this particular iteration related loops, like iteration related methods, basically it will try to repeat like this. It will try to repeat like this. Now you can see, so how many elements we are having right now? We are having these are all the elements here, something like A, B, C, D, and E, F, G, H, something like we have some other values also, and something like a string, and we have two more values. Okay, now whenever we are calling this particular as next here, every time it will keep on, whether we are having next value or not, it will keep on identifying the next value. Whenever we don't have a next value, what happens internally? This loop, the whatever the while loop we define here, it will come out of this particular line number 44. If we are having, it will enter into line number 42. It will print the value. Okay, it will print this particular value. So this is important. We need to understand here. So we'll see how this example it is going to work. How this particular example it is going to work, we need to understand here. Now I've saved this example. So why this Eclipse is taking some time? Now if you see, each and every value it is printing here. Whatever the value we are having right now here, this value is only we are getting here. Okay, this value is only we are getting here. So but here every value we are trying to print in the next line. Every value we are trying to print in the next line. So if you are not interested here, what we can do, we can call the some simple print method, and we can provide this some space so that we can easily understand. Each value will move on to the current line. Now you can see, so A, B, C, D, something, these are all the values, and finally this is the size I'm printing. Okay, this is the size I'm trying to print here. But what you understand basically here, we are trying to call each and every time this particular has next method whenever we are having more elements. So same way, once I enter into this, here I'm going to make one more condition. Here I'm going to make one more condition, list iterator dot has previous. Okay, whenever we are having this particular has previous here, now I will try to print the previous value. Okay, so here I'm going to provide the message something like and list iterator dot previous value. Okay, now understand here, this is a way we can print the previous value. Okay, we'll go for the next value only. Because why I'm using inside this particular inside the while loop here, because if I'm trying to use this outside, we cannot run more times here, because the first iteration only it will try to give us a false value, so that we cannot repeat multiple times. Now if you see what happening internally, it's keep on printing here. Okay, it is keep on printing the same value. So it is not yet stopping here. So this is, we'll call it as a infinity loop. Getting the point? So we cannot write like this. Okay, now what is the best way of writing it? So once it is completed the operation, getting the point? Once it is completed this particular operation, is there any way to write here? Now you can see, if I'm going to write outside of this, what happens internally? What happens internally? Only one iteration only, it is failure. So these are all the particular whatever we discuss here. So this is something like next iteration, and from here it is trying to call the previous iteration. Okay, it is calling the previous iteration. What you understand here? First we are calling the next, and later we are calling the previous. If I'm going to call before only, if I'm going to call, what happens internally? Nothing. So this particular previous value, it will return as a empty, like it will return false here. Now you can see it is returning false. We should get the previous value first because I am trying to print the previous. Later I am calling the next here. The previous is now it is returning as a false. The has previous we are having the false, because of that it is not printing this particular values here. Okay, after the next only if I'm trying to print this, we are getting the all the values here. All the values. Now what you understand here, first we need to call the has next, later we can move on to the has previous here. So simply using this particular list iterator, we can call the bidirections operations. We can move on to the next value, same way we can move on to the previous value. So this is the one of the important example we identified using this particular list iteration. So now what I will do, I'm going to comment out this, and here instead of calling this particular list iterator, I'm going to call the one of the important al dot iterator. This iterator is coming from the where? This is coming from the collection interface here. Okay, this is coming from the collection interface. Now what is the return type it is returning here? Now it is trying to return the iterator. It is trying to return the iterator. Now what is the value we are going to get from this particular iterator? Only has next. Only has next we are having. There is no has previous. Getting the pen. So this particular iteration, this particular iterator will give you the only like forward directions here. There is no the backward directions here. Okay. This is another important we need to understand. So simply we can call this particular list iteration to get the some advantages of this particular the earliest values. We can move on to the bidirections here, but only with this particular iterator will move on to the forward directions here. Okay. Now if I'm going to call has next here, now I will try to write the same while loop here. Same while loop I'm going to call. And iterator, sorry. Iterator dot and next here. Next I'm going to call here. So once we call this particular next here, now you can see whatever the value we got earlier, same value we are getting here. Because here we are calling this section. We are calling this particular section and the same value we are getting here. Okay. This is another important section we discuss here, list iterator. And one more method we are having inside this particular list interface. What is that? This is a one more list iterator which is expecting into indexer. Now we need to understand this, how this is this particular list iterator is expecting one parameter. So if I'm going to write here, if I'm going to provide something like a 10, so what happens internally? This is we need to understand first. What exactly it is doing internally, we need to understand here. So here we are trying to call the range check for this particular addition here. Now if I'm going to check here, so it should be within the size here. It should be within the size. If you are trying to give outside of this particular size, it will given a this exception information. Okay, index out of bound exception. Now what I'm trying to give you, the particular value it is a 10, so we'll get an exception. We'll modify the value, but now after checking this particular range index, what we need to understand, I'm trying to call this particular list iterator object. List iterator object. Now if I'm trying to move inside this, it is extending this particular ITR, and internally it is trying to implement this particular list iterator. Finally, what you understand here, we are moving on to the same section. Okay, we are moving on to the same section. Now you can see has previous, next index here, and previous index here, and previous value, and set value we are having inside this, add, and finally where is the next? So this is the outside of this, I hope. Yeah, this is the outside of this. But here, these are all the method we can call. Add method we can call, set method, and previous method we are having, Next. Where is the next here? Okay, next I think it is not implemented inside this. So we'll see how this particular example it is going to work whenever we are trying to provide the index value. Now finally, here I can give the size 7. Okay, if we give this particular 8 also, it will give an exception. Only we can give 7. Now I'm trying to give this particular 7, and later I'm getting this particular list iterator. And if I'm going to call this list iterator dot, what are the values we are having? Again, I'm getting the next and previous. Has next and has previous we are having. Okay, so we'll call the has next here. Again, I'm going to use the same while loop here. And internally, what we need to understand here? Internally, what we need to understand here? We can call the different methods here. First, I will print this. Okay. Here I'm going to provide the information something like list iterator dot next value. After printing this particular next value, now I'm going to call list iterator dot any set method we are having. We can set this particular value. So the value I'm going to set as a 789 here. Okay, and any other method we are having, list iterator dot add method. Getting the point? Now you can see add method I'm going to give as a 1, 2, 3. And after this, whatever we are having, list iterator dot, so remove method also. Remove method. Getting the point? These are all the specific methods which are available inside this particular list iterator. Now what I will do, the remove I will call from the after getting the next value. After getting the next value. Now you can see whenever I'm trying to run this, we'll identify how it is going to call this. Now you can see what happening internally. I'm getting an exception, illegal state exception. Line number 54. Getting the point? So why I'm getting this particular illegal state exceptions? For example, if I'm going to comment out this example first, and I will call, because line number 54 only we are getting an exception. So how I identified this exception? And here you can see this particular section is giving the information arraylist.demo.java. The 54 basically it is providing the line number. Now you can see here we are getting the particular exception. So the line I commented, we'll see later how it is going to work. Now what you understand here? Only I and J it is printing. Getting the point? Only I and J it is printing here. So only why I and J it is printing? Because if you observe carefully here, based on this, now what I am doing here, I'm trying to load the current object. What is the current object we are having? Something like this is the last object. Getting the point? Now we'll try to debug this particular section. We'll try to debug this particular section. You will understand here. Here we are calling this particular index. We are trying to call this particular index, and internally it is calling this particular constructor, and it is trying to set this particular cursor. What is the cursor value right now? Cursor value 7. Whenever the 7 is available, it will try to identify the value here. So here if you see where is the next method, set method, here we need to identify this section. Okay, whenever I'm calling this particular set here, this is the range here. This range is satisfied now. We got this particular exception, illegal state exception. Whenever I'm trying to call this particular set method, this is the condition we are identified. So otherwise, we'll call the arraylist dot this dot set. Okay, otherwise we'll call this. But what we understand, what is the last RET, what is the value we are having, default value? So there is no default value. Previous is not going to call. So next to REC they are making as a -1. We need to debug the code, so then only we can easily understand how this particular set method is working internally. But what we need to understand, whenever I'm trying to give this particular index, it is trying to load the specified object from array list, and we can call this particular values here. So whatever the value I'm trying to print, it is trying to print this particular value, and later we set this particular value. Add method. Okay, add method is identified. After this, we are calling the remove method. So which one it is removed here? Right now we cannot understand. So here I am going to print this. The size, instead of size, I will print this particular AL. We'll get idea which objects are removed and which objects are added. Now you can see. So this particular add, whatever the 1, 2, 3 we provided, the 1, 2, 3 now it is replaced with I and j. Why it is replaced here? Here we are trying to remove this. So now what I will do, I'm going to comment out the remove method. I'm saving this. I'm running this. Now you can see what you understand here. Whenever we are calling this particular add method, it is trying to add the new element inside this particular array list here. So you can see here it is added. Here it is added in the 7th index. Why it is added in the 7th index? Because we provided the particular index as a 7 here. Whenever we are providing this 7, now it is added, and finally we are trying to print this particular all the values. Okay, we are trying to print this particular all the values here, but only the next, the line number 56, whatever we are trying to print this particular next. So this is the value, ij value. Only one time this particular loop is repeated. Getting the point? Because why it is repeated only one time? Because we given here index here. Whenever we are providing the index, only the one value it is going to load, the value we repeated here, and the next time there is no values here. From the next time onwards, it is coming out here. For example, if I'm going to give 4. Okay, if I'm going to give 4, now we need to understand what happens internally. Now we need to understand what happens internally. Now you can see what you understand here. So from the 4 index onward, these are all the objects we are having. Getting the point? These are all the objects we are having. And how many times this loop is repeated? 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And now you can see 1. So from here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The add method is called internally 4 times. The same value it is added inside this particular array list. Because this particular loop, how many times it is repeated? 4 times. Why it is repeating 4 times? Because from the 4th index onwards, we are having few more elements. To complete the few more elements here, this loop is repeated 4 times here, because we are calling has next here. Getting the point? So this is the list iterator. Basically, we can define the specified index. From the specified index onwards, it will move on to the lost elements here. It will move on to the lost elements. So this is all about the one of the another important example, something like a list iterator here. Okay, so any questions regarding this particular list iterator? Okay, now what you need to understand here, so I'm going to comment out this example, and here whatever we discussed in the earlier, I'm going to enable, otherwise I copy this and list iterator only, right? And here I'm going to provide this. So using this particular list iterator, now instead of printing this particular next value, what I will do, so I'm going to call list iterator dot remove. Okay, list iterator dot remove. Whenever I'm trying to call this particular remove method, internally what happens here, it will try to remove all the objects here. it will try to remove the all the objects. But what we need to understand here, the line number 62, we are getting an exception. Why we are getting an exception here? We need to understand here why we are having, like, what is the condition is missing here. If we go to this, here we are trying to throw here. So remove method, we are having last RET value. What is the last RET value? Okay, now I understand. We'll call the next here. Because RET we are having -1. The whatever the condition they provided, they are trying to have the value as a -1. Because of that, the condition is satisfying and it is removing here. Now observe carefully. Whenever you are calling this particular next, now we are trying to load, these are all the values. After loading, whatever the object we are loading here, we are trying to removing. Whatever the object we are loading, the object is removed here. So now finally, the AL is empty. The AL is empty. But another important, what we need to understand, directly we cannot call the remove method. After calling the previous or next method only, we can call this particular remove method here. Getting the point. This is another important example we need to understand regarding this particular list iterator here. And if I'm going to provide any other method we are having, list iterator dot add method we discuss here. So here we are going to come up with a one by one iteration here. Hash code has next index here. So if we want to find out the next index here, so we can find out the value of this, how it is going to provide the next index here. So this also I'm trying to find out the next index. Now you can see every time it is trying to return 1. Because here the object will get only 1. Because of that, it is trying to return only 1 here. Getting the point? It's trying to return only 1. So this is not the expected index. Basically, if we come out of this array list here, we can easily understand what are the values we are having, and these values are stored in the which index location. But internally, whenever I'm trying to call list iterator dot next index here, so every time it is returning 1 value. So if I'm going to call previous here, so previous index here. If I'm going to call the previous index here, every time it is returning 0. Getting the point? So previous index, once we call the next value, we are not going to get the previous value here. Because of that, now it is returning as a 0. This is important, the two method we are having. So we identify the two methods here. Finally, any other method we are having inside this particular list iterator. So these are all the remove method, set method we call, some of the wait and object related methods also is included inside this particular list iterator. Okay, so this is the advanced concept we are going to have compared to this particular iterator. And most of the classes cannot have this particular list iterator. We'll see which classes are having list iterator and what are the classes are having iterators. So we'll discuss about this. And any questions regarding this, the list iterator so far what we discuss here, list iterator and these two concepts and the iterator method what we added inside this particular collection interface. Okay, if you don't have anything, the another important one, sublist here. Okay, sublist. So what exactly the sublist is going to work internally? Now observe carefully. I'm going to comment out this particular while loop here. Now I'm going to comment out this particular while loop, and here al dot sublist. Whenever we are providing this particular sublist, we need to provide the from index as well as to index. From index, I can give you 0, and the to index, if I'm going to give something like 5, something like 5, what happens internally? It is trying to give us a one more list object. Okay, one more list object, and I will try to print this particular sublist here. And now you can see this particular sublist, what it will do, it will copy the based on this particular range of this particular value into another list here, another list. Now you can see what happening internally. This is the sublist. Okay, this is the sublist is copied and it is printing list. And whenever I'm trying to give the range as a 50, what happens internally? So we already discussed here, whenever we are trying to discuss with index related section, every time first it is going to check the index conditions here. Okay, index condition. Now we'll see how this particular index conditions are going to made. Now you can see to index is 50. Getting the right now the to index is 50. We don't have here. What are the elements we are having right now? 8 here. So we inserted only 8 records, but the condition we given as a 50. Because of this, we are getting an exception. So the exception every time you can see same here, like index out of bound exception. Index out of bound exception. Whatever we are discussing, most of the cases the implemented index out of bound exceptions only. Okay, this is a way of writing the simple example inside this particular array list here. And all the method, I hope all the methods I covered, whatever we discussed inside this particular like collection interface as well as list interface. So any questions, any method you want to discuss here? Anyone having any specific method clarification? Okay, if we don't have, now I'm moving another important example here, something like list is a one, like array list is a one of the implementation class. Now what we'll understand here, we discuss about the array list. Array list is implemented from the list interface. Okay, now we'll discuss another implementation class. So we have a one more implementation class, something like linked list. This is also implemented from the particular list interface here. So we'll see how this particular class is implemented. Now first we need to identify the how this particular class contain the information. Linked list, the name of the class we are having linked list. Now it is extending from this particular sequential list. Okay, now it is extending from this particular sequential list. Now you can see it is implementing this particular list as well as it is trying to implement from the DQ also. Okay, if I'm going to open this particular DQ where we define, this is the DQ, right? DQ is contain these many methods. Okay, DQ contains these many methods. Some of the methods we copy from the queue interface and some of the methods are copy the own specific method inside the DQ. Now observe carefully how many methods we need to discuss inside the linked list. First we need to discuss about the collection. Okay, later we need to discuss about the list. Okay, and later we need to discuss about this particular queue, and later we need to discuss about the DQ. So why we need to discuss these 4 interfaces here? Why we need to discuss this particular 4 interfaces? Now you can see here it is internally extending 2 interfaces. These 2 interfaces internally extending 2 more interfaces here. Getting the point? Finally, the 4 interfaces methods we need to discuss inside this particular linked list. Before discussing about this particular method, now we need to understand the abstract class. What exactly the abstract class containing here? Abstract sequential list. Now this is the protected default constructor. So get method we are having and set method we are having. So now you can see get method we are providing the index and internally it is calling the list iterator based on this particular index. So just now we discuss here with the help of this particular list iterator we are providing the index parameter. Same thing it is calling. After this it is calling the next here. it is calling the next here. Whenever we are calling the next, it will try to print out the next value here. Okay, set method. Okay, here we are calling the based on this particular index. Again, we are calling the list iterator, and we are calling the next value. This is the old value we are getting, and based on this particular old value, we are trying to call the set method. Set method basically within the size which element we want to override, then only we are going to call the this particular set method. So for the new value, we are not going to call this particular set method. Okay, this is important here. Now add method. Add method. So add method internally, again see, all the methods are calling list iterator. Getting the point? List iterator they are calling here. So far, whatever we discuss here, remove method also it's calling list iterator. And add all method. Add all method also it's calling iterator. Because whatever the index related method we are having, all the index related methods are implemented with help of this particular list iterator method here. And this is the iterator we are having, and this is the list iterator is the abstract method. Now we need to understand this how it is implemented. The list iterator, how it is implemented inside the linked list, because this is the main method it is calling whenever we are trying to call index related method. Index related method. Okay, now we identify the abstract sequential list what is contained here. Some of the methods are implemented, and each and every methods are calling internally list iterator method. So we'll go back to the linked list here. Now you can see, so what we need to understand here, node concepts here. By default it is a 0, and now you can see we are having another important section here, node concept. So the linked list, it is not going to store with a object array. Okay, this is the different concept we need to understand. It is trying to work on the node concept. Node first and node last here. What exactly the node contain? We'll discuss about the node what is contained. So this is the one of the default constructor. It is not having anything. Okay, and another one it is calling like a linked list. One more constructor we are having, it is expecting collection as a parameter. Whenever it is extending the collection as a parameter, what is the method we are calling? Add all method we are calling from the constructor. From the constructor we are calling add all, and this is the private method link first. Okay, private method we'll discuss later. All the public method we'll see first. So now you can see link last method. This is the void, or you can see there is no access modifier, public, private, protected, something we don't have. Default they provided. The default access modifier can we use outside of this particular package? No, we cannot use. Okay, so what is the package it's contained in this particular linked list? It is coming java.util package. Getting the point? So this is a way this particular class we don't have access. We cannot access this particular class, and this is also link before, link last, and so link first. Now what you understand here? It is trying to connect like this. So we'll have a node. Okay, I will show you the node object how it is implemented first. So we'll go back to the node section. Now if I'm trying to open this, now what we are having inside the node? So these are all the 3 items. These are all the 3 items we are having. This is the next node, and this is the previous node, and item. So I will, here I'm going to provide as a previous node, item, and next here. Next we are having, and whenever I'm going to insert one more information, again it will contain like this, previous, item, and next. The next it is going to communicate it with this particular previous. Okay, the next it is going to communicate it with this particular previous. Here I'm going to write, and the value, whatever the value we are going to write, like with the help of this particular add methods here, it will try to store inside this particular item. Okay, inside this particular item. Again next, if I'm trying to create a one more, again it will look like the same. The next is going to communicate it with this particular previous. The last node will contain null, and the first previous one also it will contain the null, because there is no another object here. Getting the point? So this is the structure it is going to use to store the value inside this particular linked list. Getting the point. This is very important concept we are going to discuss regarding this particular linked list, how it is going to implement it. So now, if you come back to here, whatever the method we identified so far, the link first. Now, what you understand here, whatever we are going to pass this particular object here, whatever we are going to pass this particular object, we are trying to store in the first node, and same way you can store in the last node, and you can store in the link before whatever the node I'm providing, here. So before this node, okay, before this particular node is nothing but this section. Okay, this is the one node. Okay, don't confuse it. This is the another node, and this is the one more node. Okay, this each part will contain as a node section. This is the node here. Link before. Before this particular node, you can link the whatever the object I'm trying to pass here. E nothing but the element whatever we are going to pass. And the same way we have a different node. Now you can see unlink. So there is no, like, you disconnect this particular link between these two. And you can call the same thing, we can disconnect this particular link. We'll try to debug this particular example to understand more how it is going to work internally. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue this particular example. So far, whatever we discussed this particular array list example here, try to practice all the methods with a different example. Not only this particular string, whatever I discussed string, try with a integer, try with a double, try with a custom object, like creating the what we discussed, the box class, or the come up with the one person class or member classes, or any like a ATM related class, any class. So try with a multiple example, so you will understand how this particular array list is working internally. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue this particular node example. It's like a linked list example. So tomorrow also one of the important example we are going to discuss here. Okay, so any questions regarding our today's session? Okay, if we don't have anything, so we'll continue tomorrow.